This is the story I have to tell you. After I slapped my husband's mistress, he snapped my leg and locked me in the basement. So, I called my father, a man with more power than the law. "Pop," I told him, "don't leave a single soul in that family breathing." It was our 3rd wedding anniversary. I wanted to surprise Quincy, so I wrapped up my appointments at New York Fashion Week early. When I pushed open the door to our penthouse in Tribeca, the sharp, dry click of my stilettos echoed off the white Italian marble. Women's bras and lace underwear were strewn across the living room floor. The trail led straight up to the 2nd floor, right into our master bedroom. My heart hammered against my ribs, and my palms went cold and clammy. But a foolish part of me still held onto a shred of hope. Maybe the housekeeper was just clearing out old things. That hope shattered the second I heard those familiar moans from inside. "Quincy, what if your wife comes back early?" Siani's voice was sickeningly sweet. "Don't trip, babe. Kamari is stuck in Midtown. She won't be back until the day after tomorrow." Quincy's breath was ragged with an excitement I had never heard before. "And even if she did come back, what's she gonna do? She's just a starving designer living off my dime." I stood outside the door, trembling from head to toe. Siani, my best friend from Howard University, was in my bed with my husband. The last 3 years I had poured into that man and his family were reduced by Quincy to nothing but a parasitic whim. My patience evaporated. I kicked the door open. The sight of those 2 bodies intertwined hit me like a physical blow. "Kamari!" Quincy scrambled off Siani. Siani screamed and pulled the silk sheets up, but there was a defiant, nasty smirk on her face. "Kamari, listen to me. You don't understand." "Shut your mouth." My hand connected with her cheek with everything I had. Siani's head snapped back, her perfectly contoured nose twisted, and a thin line of blood leaked from the corner of her mouth. "Kamari, have you lost your damn mind?" Quincy jumped out of bed and punched me square in the gut. I doubled over in agony, but I forced my head up, glaring at him with pure rage. "Quincy, how could you do this to me? After everything?" He grabbed me by my hair and dragged me toward the stairs. "Who do you think you are? You're just a girl who draws clothes. Marrying into my family was the biggest win your people ever had. How dare you touch Siani? Her father is the CEO of the Fairchild Group." Even as I felt my scalp tearing, I started to laugh. "Oh, so you're betraying me because her family has more zeros in their bank account? Did you forget who stood by you when you were nothing but a kid from the block with a dream? Shut your stinking mouth!" In a fit of rage, he shoved me. I lost my balance and tumbled down the grand staircase. My right leg slammed into a decorative pedestal at the landing. There was a sickening, loud crack. It was followed by a pain so white-hot that my vision went black. "Stop acting and get up!" Quincy walked down and kicked my broken leg. I shrieked, my back instantly soaked in a cold sweat. "Quincy, I think her leg is actually broken." Siani ran down, wrapped in a sheet. Seeing the unnatural twist of my limb, her face went pale. "What a nuisance!" Quincy hissed. He grabbed me by the arm and dragged me toward the basement door. "Throw her in there to let her learn a lesson. She needs to remember her place." I nearly blacked out from the pain, but I bit my lip until it bled to keep from making another sound. As he tossed me into the damp, dark cellar, I heard Quincy telling the staff not to give me a drop of water or a crumb of food for the next 24 hours. "Let her reflect," he said. The heavy steel door slammed shut, and the darkness swallowed everything. I curled into a corner. My right leg was so swollen it didn't even look like a leg anymore. I was losing track of time. How long had it been? I reached into my pocket and felt my phone. By some miracle, it hadn't smashed. At the very bottom of my contacts was a number I hadn't dialed in 20 years. The name was just one word: Pop. I hit the call button. After 3 rings, a deep, authoritative voice answered. "Who is this?" "Pop." My voice was a raspy whisper. "It's me, Kamari." There were a few seconds of dead silence on the other end, then the sound of a chair crashing over and a voice thick with worry. "Kamari, where are you? What happened?" "My husband broke my leg and locked me in the basement. Pop, please help me." "Send me the location. I'll be there in 10 minutes. Before he hung up, I heard him barking furious orders to get the cars ready. With a shaking hand, I sent the GPS pin, and then I just started laughing. I laughed until tears streamed down my face. That fool Quincy thought I was just some random designer. He never imagined who my father really was. My mother had revealed it to me on her deathbed. My father was Elias the Deacon Vance, the head of the Syndicate, a powerful organization that controlled the underground from Harlem to the docks of Jersey. My mother, who wanted no part of that life for me, had left him and raised me alone. Out of respect for her, I had sworn to live without the shadow of my family. I hadn't even told my father about my wedding. But what was the point of nobility now? Not even 10 minutes had passed when I heard heavy footsteps and the sound of a struggle upstairs. Then the basement door was kicked off its hinges. In the blinding light, a massive man in a black suit rushed in. "Miss Lathan, I'm Malik. The deacon sent me to get you." He knelt down, checked my leg, and his face hardened into stone. "Those sons of b—" As Malik lifted me gently, I saw two of Quincy's security guys unconscious by the door. Upstairs in the foyer, Quincy and Siani were on their knees, held down by men in suits. Their faces were masks of pure terror. "Kamari, who are these people? What are you doing?" Quincy yelled, struggling. Leaning weakly against Malik's shoulder, I gave him a bloody smile. "I'll introduce you. This is my father's right hand. And as for who my father is, you're going to find out real soon, Quincy." As Malik carried me toward a blacked-out SUV waiting outside, I heard Siani's hysterical scream. "Impossible! Kamari's father is a nobody!" Inside the car, a middle-aged man with salt and pepper hair waited nervously. When he saw my state, a lethal glint crossed his eyes. "Kamari. Pop. Pop is going to break every bone in those animals' bodies." His voice was as cold as a Chicago winter. "And as for the Fairchild family, don't leave a single one of them standing." The early summer sun was so bright I couldn't open my eyes as Malik rushed me out. I clenched my teeth until I tasted the metallic tang of blood in my mouth to endure the stabbing pain in my leg. "Just a little longer, miss." Malik's voice was steady. The faint scent of gunpowder on him was strangely calming. Behind me, I could hear Quincy shouting, "This is breaking and entering! I'm calling the cops! Kamari, who the hell did you call?" I didn't even look back. Malik's men would handle him. When the SUV door opened, I came face to face with my father, Elias Vance, for the first time in 2 decades. He looked older than I remembered. His hair was almost entirely white, but his eagle eyes, sharp as a switchblade, hadn't changed. They were fixed on my mangled leg. "Kamari." His voice shook slightly. He reached out a hand but stopped in midair. "Malik, get her to the private wing at NYU. Call Dr. Sterling. Tell him to prep the OR." They laid me carefully on the leather seats. My father used silk pillows to prop up my leg. He hit a button, and a soundproof glass partition rose, separating us from the driver. "Who did this?" The question was short, but his voice was like an iceberg. "My husband, Quincy Sterling," I said with a bitter smile. "I caught him cheating with Siani Fairchild." My father's gaze was like the ocean before a hurricane, calm on top, but with enough power to destroy everything. He picked up his phone and dialed. "Investigate 2 names, Quincy Sterling and Siani Fairchild. Fairchild is the daughter of George Fairchild. Right, don't touch them yet. Wait for my orders." He hung up and turned to me. "Why did you never call me? After your mother left, I never stopped looking for you." "Mama didn't want me involved in the syndicate," I answered softly. "I went to art school. I got a job at a top firm. I thought I could live a normal life." A muscle in my father's cheek twitched. "And that's why you married a beast who broke your leg." I couldn't answer. Outside the window, the city skyline blurred past as fast as the 3 years of my stupid marriage. At the VIP entrance of the hospital, several doctors were already waiting. Dr. Sterling, the best orthopedic surgeon on the East Coast, personally wheeled my gurney toward the elevator. My father held my hand the entire time until we reached the operating room. His hand was rough, but warm. The surgery was a success. When I opened my eyes, I was in a hospital suite that looked like a 5-star hotel. My right leg was in a cast and elevated. Outside the window was a magnificent night view of the Manhattan skyline. My father was sitting on the sofa by the bed, reading documents under a lamp. His profile looked particularly cold and hard. "Pop," I called out softly. He immediately dropped the papers and came over. "How do you feel? The doctor said the surgery went well, but you have to stay off that leg for 2 months." "Thank you." I hesitated, then asked, "What about Quincy and the others?" "Malik took care of the immediate situation." A deadly spark lit my father's eyes. "Your idiot husband thought we were just some neighborhood thugs. He kept shouting about how he'd sue us." I laughed, but the movement made my wound throb. Poor, naive Quincy. He had no idea who he had messed with. The syndicate was a vast network that influenced politics and the economy from the shadows. Even the high-ranking officials in the city didn't dare cross them. "Kamari, I want to hear your thoughts." My father sat beside me. "According to the rules of the circle, that coward Quincy should already be at the bottom of the Hudson River." I closed my eyes. I remembered the day I met Quincy 3 years ago. Back then, he was a young entrepreneur just starting out. He waited outside my office for a month saying he wanted me to design his company's logo. He said my designs had soul, that he had never met a woman as special as me. "I want him to feel a pain worse than death," I said, my voice turning icy. "The Sterling family, on the surface, they're real estate giants. But behind the scenes, they built their wealth on predatory loans and illegal evictions. I want Quincy to watch as everything falls apart before his eyes until he has nothing left, just like he tried to do to me." A satisfied smile appeared on my father's face. He pulled a folder from his jacket. "My men just found out the Sterlings are betting everything on the bidding for the new Elysian Fields development in Brooklyn. Their bid documents are full of inflated numbers." He flipped a page. "And the best part? Your dear husband has embezzled $3 million from company funds to wash through a casino in Atlantic City, and he hasn't covered the hole yet." I took the documents. My heart started racing. With this evidence alone, I could put Quincy in prison and tank the Sterling stock. "Pop, I need time," I said, taking a deep breath. "I'll pretend I've forgiven him. I'll go back to the house and gather more proof." "It's too dangerous," my father frowned. "Please." I took his hand. "I want to destroy him with my own hands." After a long silence, my father finally nodded. "Fine, but Malik stays by your side, 24/7. He pressed a bell to call Malik. "From now on, your life belongs to the young mistress." Malik knelt and handed me a special phone. "Miss, here is my direct line and the deacon's emergency contacts. If there's any danger, press this red button and we'll be there in 3 minutes." I took the phone. Its weight felt like the key to a new life. At that moment, Quincy appeared at the door of my room, his face terrified. His suit was wrinkled, and he had deep, dark circles under his eyes. It was obvious he hadn't slept in days. Kamari." His voice was shaking. He was holding a small bouquet of lilies. "I didn't know your father was Elias Vance, I swear." I composed my face into a tired but forgiving smile. "I made a mistake too, Quincy. I shouldn't have hit Siani." Quincy rushed to the bed as if he had found a lifeline. "Kamari, do you forgive me? I went crazy. Siani seduced me. It won't happen again, I promise." Seeing his clumsy acting, I felt like vomiting up the soup I had just eaten. But the show had to go on. "Pop already gave you a good lesson. Let's forget it," I said calmly. "When I get out of the hospital, we'll start over, okay?" Quincy, unable to contain his joy, nodded repeatedly. He didn't imagine that while he held my hand with his hypocritical fingers, a hidden camera in the room was recording every single one of his expressions. The day I was discharged, my father sent a Maybach to take me back to the Sterling estate. The scene was so grand it made the local news. Quincy went pale when he saw it was Malik himself pushing my wheelchair into the house. "If the young mistress gets so much as a scratch," Malik whispered into Quincy's ear, loud enough for me to hear, "the deacon said he'll watch you be eaten alive by street dogs." Quincy started shaking so violently he nearly wet his pants. Stepping back into the place I once called home made me nauseous, especially the bedroom. Even though Quincy had changed the sheets, I could still picture him rolling around there with Siani. "Kamari, get some rest. I have to handle something at the office." Quincy gave me a glass of water and tried to leave quickly. "Sure, come back soon." I smiled as I watched him leave and immediately poured the water into a potted plant. Malik was standing outside the door. I opened my laptop and started working. As Quincy's wife, I knew the passwords to all his devices. Accessing his cloud account, I quickly found what I was looking for: hotel reservations from the last 6 months, wire transfers, and even some videos that were hard to watch. Bastard. I smiled coldly as I saved the evidence. At that moment, a new message popped up on the screen. From Siani, "Thank God that idiot believed everything. I'm waiting for you at our usual spot. I missed you so much, baby." I looked at the screen and laughed out loud. "Quincy, you couldn't even last 3 days. Fine, my revenge will be even more fun." I picked up the special phone and called my father. "Pop, I think we can start buying up Sterling stock." "Yes, quietly, without anyone noticing." After the call, I looked at the sunlight outside the window. I used to believe love was everything. I willingly dimmed my own light to be Quincy's shadow. But now, that innocent Kamari had been shattered just like the bone in her leg. From now on, I would make it clear to the whole world what the price was for touching the syndicate's daughter. "Miss, are you sure you want to do this?" Malik asked, standing by the dressing room door with a frown. I was adjusting my earrings in front of the full-length mirror. The woman in the reflection wore a dark red dress. Her red lips were as vivid as blood. The cast on my right leg had been removed, replaced by a delicate metal brace that peeked out slightly through the slit in the dress. "Of course." I turned to Malik. "The Sterlings are having an anniversary gala. How could I miss it? I'm the hostess." Malik opened his mouth to say something, but closed it again. In the 2 weeks since I'd returned home, I had seemingly reconciled with Quincy. But behind the scenes, through my father's contacts, I had already bought 3% of the Sterling shares and contacted 2 small shareholders willing to sell. My phone vibrated. A message from my father. "Caspian Vance has arrived in New York. He'll be attending the gala tonight as a guest. He has what you need." A corner of my mouth tilted up. Caspian Vance, the son of an old friend of my father's and a financial genius trained on Wall Street. He was the man in charge of the syndicate's legal investments. With his help, my plan would take flight. "Miss, the car is ready." Malik handed me a silver USB drive. "The video you requested has been processed." I tucked the USB into my clutch. The cold metal shimmered under the lights, just like my mood. The anniversary gala for the Sterling Group, which was also our wedding anniversary, was held at the St. Regis in Manhattan. The moment I entered the ballroom on Quincy's arm, hundreds of eyes fixed on me. Curiosity, surprise, and above all, a morbid expectation, as if I were a circus act. After all, the rumor that the daughter-in-law of a mogul had caught her husband cheating with her best friend had spread like wildfire through high society. "Kamari, you look beautiful tonight," Quincy whispered in my ear. His warm breath on my neck made my skin crawl. I suppressed my disgust and smiled sweetly. "It's an important night. I can't let you look bad." Quincy breathed a sigh of relief. The sweet and understanding attitude I had shown him over the last 2 weeks, and even the fact that I had convinced my father to forgive him, must have convinced him that I had forgotten everything. Poor fool. My in-laws approached with forced smiles. After discovering my true identity, the attitude of this pair of social climbers had done a 180-degree turn. "Daughter, is your leg a bit better? Quincy has been such a boy. We are incredibly grateful for your understanding," my father-in-law said, rubbing his hands together. I responded with a smile and looked around the room. I immediately spotted Siani standing by the champagne tower. She was wearing a white lace dress that made her look like a cheap wedding cake. She was shooting me a look full of resentment. "I'm going to go say hi to an old friend." I let go of Quincy's arm and, leaning on my cane, headed toward Siani. Her face went pale, and she instinctively stepped back. "Siani, long time no see." My voice wasn't too loud or too soft, just enough for the people around us to hear. "The white suits you. You look just like the ghost you played in the college play." A few people around us couldn't help but chuckle. Siani's face went white, then red as a tomato. "Kamari, don't be so arrogant. Quincy is only with you because he's scared of your father." I placed a finger over her lips. On such an important day, let's not say things that ruin the vibe. I leaned into her ear and whispered in a voice only she could hear, "There's going to be a fun show later. Try to keep your composure." Before she could respond, I turned elegantly and ran into Caspian Vance, who had just arrived. He wore a perfectly tailored navy suit, and his eyes behind gold-rimmed glasses were as sharp as a hawk's. "Miss Lathan, I've heard so much about you." He gently kissed the back of my hand. "The deacon is very proud of you, Mr. Vance." I smiled. "After the gala, do you have time to talk?" "It would be an honor." We exchanged a silent promise and parted. The party began, and my father-in-law took the stage to brag about the Sterling Group's achievements. He didn't mention a single word about the $3 million hole in the funds. I, sitting at the head table, played the perfect wife, maintaining a dignified smile and occasionally adjusting my husband's tie. "Finally, I want to thank my daughter-in-law Kamari for her understanding and generosity," my father-in-law suddenly mentioned. "We all make mistakes when we're young. What matters is that the family stays together. And now, a toast to this wonderful couple." Everyone raised their glasses. I lowered my head to hide the contempt in my eyes, and when I looked back up, I wore a loving smile. Quincy moved, took my hand. "Kamari, I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you." "You don't need a whole lifetime," I said softly. "You can start right now." Leaving him with a confused look, I leaned on my cane and slowly walked onto the stage, taking the microphone from the host. "I want to thank everyone for coming to our party despite your busy schedules." My voice was clear and distinct. "As the wife of this family, I've prepared a special gift." I signaled the light technicians. The room lights dimmed, and a massive screen slowly descended from the ceiling. Quincy's face tightened as if he had a bad feeling. "No, Kamari, please!" He rushed toward the stage to stop me, but Malik, who appeared suddenly behind him, gripped his shoulders with a hand of iron. "Honey, enjoy the show." I pressed the button on the remote. On the high-definition screen, a crisp image of Quincy and Siani rolling around in my bed appeared with crystal-clear audio. In the bottom right corner was the date, the period when I was in the hospital with a broken leg. They couldn't even wait 3 days. The entire room plunged into chaos. Siani screamed and ran for the exit, but she was blocked by security. My father-in-law was livid, and my mother-in-law fainted. And that's just the beginning. I switched the screen. Bank statements and security footage from an Atlantic City casino appeared. My husband embezzled $3 million from company funds to gamble, and because of that, the Elysian Fields project stalled, leaving hundreds of families out on the street. Finally, I played a recording of a phone call between Quincy and a hired thug for the evictions. "I don't care if someone dies. What matters is that you clear that place out by tomorrow." A deathly silence took over the room. I walked toward Quincy, who now looked like a wet rag with every step. "In our 3 years of marriage, I gave you 7 major projects, and my designs won awards that bumped Sterling stock by 30%. My voice was soft but sharp as a knife. "And in return, you gave me betrayal, violence, and humiliation." Quincy's legs gave out, and he fell to his knees. "Kamari, I was wrong, but forgive me." Suddenly, I raised my voice, addressing the shocked guests. "Because I'm a wife who loves you deeply, I forgive you." The room filled with murmurs again. My father-in-law, as if he had found salvation, rushed onto the stage and grabbed the microphone. "A misunderstanding. It's all a misunderstanding. As you can see, my daughter-in-law has already forgiven Quincy. Now please enjoy the party." I stepped elegantly off the stage and, cutting through a forest of complex gazes, headed to the corner where Caspian was. He offered me a glass of champagne. His eyes behind the glasses shone with admiration. A magnificent performance. "This is just the beginning." I took a sip. "Did you bring the documents?" Caspian pulled a folder from his briefcase. "The complete ownership structure of the Sterling Group and the real financial statements from the last 3 years. Much more interesting than the public reports." I opened the file. My eyes went wide. The real debt of the Sterling Group was more than 3 times what was declared, and huge sums of money had been diverted through shell companies. "This is enough for a short sale." "More than enough," Caspian smiled. "I've already contacted 3 specialized funds. They're just waiting for your signal." The party continued in a surreal atmosphere. Quincy followed me like a stray dog, begging for forgiveness endlessly. I maintained a dignified smile the whole time, looking like an indulgent wife. "Daughter, about the board of directors." My father-in-law pulled me aside, wiping cold sweat from his forehead. "Don't worry, father-in-law." I grabbed his arm affectionately. "I've already told my father to stop buying Sterling stock. We're family, right?" My father-in-law breathed a sigh of relief. He didn't imagine that through an offshore company, I already owned 5% of Sterling shares, and along with the 8% promised to me by 2 small shareholders, I was already the 4th largest shareholder. At the end of the gala, Caspian accompanied me home. Malik was sitting in the passenger seat, never letting his guard down. "Next week, Sterling stock will crash," Caspian analyzed. "With the scandal you broke tonight and the help of our funds, they'll hit a floor for at least 3 days. "Good," I said, as I watched the city lights flash past. "When they hit the bottom, we buy it all." When the car stopped in front of the villa, Caspian asked suddenly, "Did you really forgive him?" I smiled and pointed to my right leg, which still needed the brace. "Mr. Vance, do you believe in turning the other cheek?" "No, coincidentally, neither do I." Inside the house, Quincy was kneeling in the living room, crying like a child. Looking down at him, the situation felt utterly ridiculous. This was the man I once loved, this coward, this spineless, wretched creature. "Kamari, I was wrong. I was really wrong," he sobbed. Grabbing one of my legs and staining my expensive dress with snot and tears, I gently stroked his head, like you do with a dog. "Quincy, let's start over." He lifted his head, a spark of hope in his eyes. But I continued. "I want to see your sincerity. I heard Siani's father will be bidding for the new North District development." Quincy immediately understood my intent. "Tomorrow morning, I'll break all agreements with the Fairchild family." "Very good," I patted his cheek. "Now go to sleep. You have to go to work tomorrow." After Quincy went upstairs, thanking me 1,000 times, I went into the study and locked the door. I called my father. "Pop, it's time for the next step. Yes, I need proof of the Fairchild family's illegal activities." After hanging up, I opened my computer and re-watched the video from the party. The image stopped on Quincy kneeling, begging for forgiveness. I hit the delete button without hesitation. "This was just the beginning, my dear husband. You'll soon find out that losing everything is the real pain, much more intense than physical agony." On the morning of the 3rd day after the gala scandal, I was sitting at the table, elegantly eating Greek yogurt with berries and honey. The brace on my right leg had been replaced by a lighter model. Quincy came downstairs with his tie crooked. He had deep circles under his eyes. "Want some coffee?" I offered him a cup of hot latte. He looked at the cup with suspicion and didn't take it. "No, thanks. I have to handle something at the office." I shrugged and took a sip. Quincy's behavior in the last few days had been quite entertaining. In public, he bowed to me, but when we were alone, he wouldn't even touch the food I had touched. Malik's warning had clearly worked. "Oh, by the way," I stopped him as he was leaving. "There's a charity auction tonight at a club downtown. I donated your Patek Philippe. Is that cool?" Quincy's face tightened. That watch was his grandfather's, a limited edition. I knew it. I smiled sweetly. "That's why the price is higher, right? The news is already in all the papers. The young heir of the Sterling Group donates a family heirloom to help those in need." He clenched his fists and then forced a smile that was worse than a grimace. "Sure, that's fine." As I watched him flee, I looked at the security cameras on my phone. As soon as he got in the car, Quincy was busy making a call, 9 times out of 10, complaining to Siani. After the scandal at the party, they had officially broken off relations, but in secret. My phone vibrated. A message from Caspian. "The funds are ready." This morning at market open, sterling stock hit a record low. A corner of my mouth turned up with satisfaction. The video from the gala had gone viral, and the hashtag #SterlingScandal was the #1 trending topic. The board of directors had requested an emergency suspension of trading, but they couldn't stop the slide. Malik appeared silently at the door. "Miss, the car is ready. Today we'll stop by the clinic for a checkup first, then go to the investigative agency Pop recommended." In the hallway of the clinic, I ran into an unexpected person, Siani, hiding behind sunglasses and a mask. She was cautiously leaving the OB/GYN department. I ducked behind a corner and secretly photographed the receipt she was paying for. Positive pregnancy test. Zooming in on the image, I couldn't help but smile. It seems Quincy's penitence on the night of the party bore fruit. In Siani's womb, indeed, a little bastard was growing. After the checkup, I told Malik to drive to an anonymous office building on the outskirts of the city. The elevator took us to the top floor. When the doors opened, an office full of electronic gear appeared. A thin man in a flannel shirt was staring at 6 monitors simultaneously. "Miss Lathan, I'm Kane," he said without even turning around. "The things the deacon asked me to find are all here." Kane played several security videos. In the recordings, Quincy and Siani were meeting at a motel in Jersey. This had happened just yesterday afternoon. But there was something more interesting. Kane switched screens, showing Siani's father, George Fairchild, and Quincy's father, Victor Sterling, meeting secretly in a private club. "They meet here regularly on the 15th of every month. They've been doing it for at least 5 years. I narrowed my eyes. "Is it possible to record their conversations?" "A bit tough," Kane said, scratching his head. "Security in that place is airtight. Use this." I pulled the fountain pen my father had given me from my bag. "The next time they meet, bribe a waiter and have him slip it into George Fairchild's pocket." Kane took the pen, and his eyes lit up. "A state-of-the-art spying micro-device. I didn't know the deacon had access to these things." Leaving the agency, I called my father. "Pop, Siani is pregnant. No, don't touch her yet. That kid might be useful. Oh, and George Fairchild and my father-in-law are meeting regularly. Something's fishy." There was a silence on the other end. "Kamari, the relationship between the Fairchilds and the Sterlings might be more complicated than you think. 20 years ago." 20 years? What happened 20 years ago? I pressed. My father responded with an unusually hesitant voice. "I'll investigate further and let you know. Tonight at the gala, be careful with Siani." After hanging up, I sat in thought. My father was clearly hiding something, and instinctively, I felt it had to do with my mother. At dusk, I put on a dress from the latest Chanel collection and asked the makeup artist for an ethereal and fragile look, elegant but piteous. Malik handed me a jewelry box from the deacon. Inside was a diamond necklace with a rare black pearl in the center. I remembered seeing that necklace in a photo of my mother. Upon arriving at the club, Malik asked, "Miss, do you want me to come in with you?" "No, wait in the car." I toyed with the black pearl on my neck. "I can handle the show tonight." The charity auction at this exclusive club was always a major high society event. As soon as I entered, the noisy room suddenly went quiet. Then, whispers erupted everywhere. "That's the Sterling daughter-in-law. They say her father is a boss who controls half the East Coast." That Quincy is a total fool for leaving her for someone like Siani Fairchild. I pretended not to hear anything and headed to my reserved seat in the front row. As soon as I sat down, a strong scent of perfume stung my nose. "Kamari, long time no see." Siani approached me in a white dress, deliberately showing off her slightly bulging belly. "I heard your leg is still not right. What a shame." I smiled and looked at her stomach. "You must be about 3 months along. You have to be careful in the early stages of pregnancy." Siani's face tightened slightly. She didn't expect me to know about her pregnancy. "Quincy is thrilled about this child." She lowered her voice, her eyes shining with malice. "He says he'll divorce you after I give birth." "Really?" I pulled the tablet from my bag and played a video. "Then how do you explain this conversation from yesterday afternoon?" In the video, Quincy was pulling his hair out neurotically. "Why does a kid have to come now? My father doesn't want to see you. The company shares have plummeted. If that crazy woman finds out we're still seeing each other, it'll be the end of me." Siani's face went ashen. "What?" "The curtains in room 308 of that motel weren't even closed properly." I sighed lightly. "If you're going to be unfaithful, at least learn the basics, girl." The people around us didn't understand our conversation, but Siani's appearance, about to faint, caught everyone's attention. I stood up and deliberately raised my voice. "Siani, you don't look well. Do you want me to call a doctor for the baby you're carrying?" "What? Siani Fairchild is pregnant? It's surely Quincy Sterling's. They caught them." The whispers spread like a wave. Siani, in a panic, tripped over her own dress and fell spectacularly in front of everyone. When she struggled up trembling, a large, bright red blood stain spread across her white dress. "Ah, my baby!" she screamed hysterically. I watched the scene with cold eyes and called 911. Tonight's show had gone better than expected. Siani had not only been publicly humiliated, but she had revealed her own pregnancy. Tomorrow morning, the gossip columnists would have plenty to write about. Before the ambulance arrived, I made sure to call Quincy for Siani. Quincy's first reaction to the news that his mistress had suffered a miscarriage was, shockingly, "Damn it, my father is going to kill me now." Upon hearing those words, Siani lost consciousness. Of course, I didn't stay for the auction. Returning to the Sterling mansion, I found Quincy in the study, smashing everything in a rage. Seeing me, he lunged at me with bloodshot eyes. "What did you do to her?" I blinked innocently. "Everyone saw it. She fell on her own. On the other hand, your words in that motel were truly moving." Quincy froze as if he had been struck by lightning. "You've been spying on me." "It doesn't matter," I said, sitting elegantly. "What matters is that I've decided to help you be together. Let's divorce." I dropped the word lightly. "I'm tired of this fake marriage." A glint of greed flashed in Quincy's eyes, immediately replaced by doubt. "Under what conditions?" "In the name of our past relationship, I'll only take what's mine." I opened a document I had prepared. "This house is mine, and you'll give me 5% of the company's shares." "In your dreams!" Quincy jumped up. "Do you know this house is worth $4 million and the shares? Not a chance." I sighed and pulled a small stack of photos from a drawer. "Then these photos will be in every paper tomorrow morning." The photos showed Quincy not only with Siani, but with at least 3 other women. The most shocking was a photo showing him gambling in an Atlantic City casino with members of a local crime ring. "You?" Quincy's face went gray. "I'll give you 3 days. Think it over." I pulled back the photos. "Oh, by the way, even though Siani lost the baby, your father will be happy. He hates the Fairchild family." "No." Quincy lifted his head suddenly. "How do you know my father hates the Fairchilds?" "I just guessed," I smiled. "If not, why would he forbid you from seeing her?" Quincy looked at me with suspicion and then stormed out, slamming the door. I immediately called the investigator. "Kane, look deep into the relationship between Victor Sterling and George Fairchild, especially the events of 20 years ago." After hanging up, I opened my computer to check my gains for the day. According to Siani's medical history, she had not only miscarried, but the shock had damaged her uterus, making future pregnancies difficult. An unexpected result. My phone vibrated, an audio file from my father. I put on my headphones. I heard George Fairchild's furious voice. "Victor, have you forgotten what happened 20 years ago? If I hadn't gotten rid of that body for you—" The recording cut off abruptly, but the content was shocking enough. Victor was my father-in-law's name. The word body gave me goosebumps. Then a message came from my father. "Kamari, come see me tomorrow. I have things to tell you." I looked at the phone screen with my heart pounding. What happened 20 years ago? Whose body was it? Did it have anything to do with my mother's sudden death? Outside, lightning split the night sky. My face, reflected in the window, was pale and cold. In my eyes burned the fire of vengeance. "Quincy, did you think the divorce was the end? It's not. It's just the signal that the next phase of my revenge is about to begin." My father's estate was nestled in a thick pine forest in the Catskills. In front of the gate, surrounded by high walls, stood 2 bodyguards in black suits. Throughout the entire drive with Malik, I was thinking about that recording. Getting rid of the body. Those words were stuck in my mind like thorns. "Miss, we've arrived," Malik reminded me softly. I took a deep breath and opened the car door. My father was pruning his old olive trees in the garden. Every one of his movements was precise and measured, showing a quiet strength. He didn't look like a man his age. He stopped and signaled for me to follow him inside. My leg was better now. I could walk without the cane. I followed him to his study. The air was thick with the scent of tobacco and leather. The study was exactly as I remembered it. Even the ceramic vase, my mother's favorite, was in its place. My father pulled a yellowed envelope from a safe. His expression was serious. 20 years ago, when your mother left me, she was pregnant with you." "I know," I nodded, "but you don't know why she left." My father pulled a faded photo and slid it in front of me. "Look at this man." In the photo, a young Victor Sterling was posing in front of a construction site with an unknown man. They were holding champagne glasses, and behind them was a banner that said, "Groundbreaking for Sterling Construction." The unknown man had his arm around my father-in-law's shoulder and was smiling widely. "Who is this man?" I frowned. "George Fairchild's brother, Claude Fairchild." My father's voice was as cold as ice. "And he was also the one who killed your mother." I dug my nails into my palm without realizing it. What really happened back then? Victor Sterling and the Fairchilds were collaborating on a redevelopment project using illegal evictions. In one of them, someone died. Claude Fairchild beat a protester to death. My father pulled another document. "Your mother photographed the evidence and wanted to report them." The document contained several blurry photos. Claude Fairchild was holding an iron bar, and a resident lay bloody on the ground. The date on the photo was a week before my mother's death. Claude Fairchild found out and went looking for her where she lived. My father's voice shook slightly. "By the time I got there, it was already too late." I looked at the photo through blurred vision. The truth about my mother's death, which I was told at 5 years old was an accidental fall, was so horrible. The police closed the case quickly due to pressure from the Sterling and Fairchild families. And Claude Fairchild? My voice was a raspy whisper. "He died." My father smiled with disdain. 3 days after the funeral, in a car accident. I lifted my head suddenly. My father's look told me everything. It was no accident. "Victor Sterling and George Fairchild covered everything up," my father said, organizing the documents. "For years I've gathered evidence, but they're too deeply rooted in politics and business. Until you married Quincy." Then I understood my father's silence. He was waiting for me to discover the truth. He didn't want to force the revenge on me. He sighed. "But now you have your own reasons for vengeance." I stood up and walked to the window. The pine forest swayed in the wind, like the whisper of countless suffering souls. My mother, who was so kind and taught me how to draw, had died such a cruel death. "Pop, they have to pay in blood." I turned around. My voice was strangely calm. Not just Quincy, but the whole Sterling and Fairchild family. A spark of satisfaction lit my father's eyes. "Do you have a plan?" "First, we have to turn them against each other." I opened my phone and looked at the report that had just arrived from Caspian. The inferior steel used in the Elysian Fields project by Sterling Construction was supplied by a shell company managed by George Fairchild. My father's eyes lit up. "You want them to fight?" "The media is ready," I said, looking at my watch. "In an hour, the news about the collapse risk of Elysian Fields will be on the front page of the Wall Street Journal." My father offered me a glass of whiskey. "As for Fairchild, I've already alerted the feds to raid his contraband containers at the port. They'll act tonight." The glasses clinked with a sharp sound. In that moment, I was my father's heir. I was no longer the foolish woman crying inside the prison of her marriage. As I left the estate, Malik handed me an envelope. "Miss, these are internal Sterling Construction documents Kane found." As I flipped through the confidential files, I smiled without realizing it. Quincy's embezzlement was worse than expected. He hadn't just lost at gambling. He had also forged board of directors' minutes to secretly mortgage the company's main assets. "Malik, let's not go back to the house. Let's go to the Sterling Construction headquarters." I changed my mind suddenly. It was time to visit my dear husband. In the boardroom on the top floor of Sterling headquarters, an emergency meeting was taking place. Through a secretary my father had planted, I was receiving real-time updates of the meeting. The Elysian Fields issue was an accident. The media exaggerated. I heard Quincy's voice through the earpiece. He was panicking. "The priority now is to stabilize the stock price." "Director Sterling, the problem isn't just the media," came an old man's voice. It was Director Abernathy, a company veteran. "According to the safety report that just arrived, all materials failed inspection. The supplier is a subsidiary of the Fairchild Group. How do you explain this?" "I don't know anything about that," Quincy said, obviously in a panic. "That's the purchasing department's responsibility." "The head of purchasing is your cousin," Abernathy responded coldly. "The board demands a full inspection, including the destination of the $3 million you spent." I heard the sound of a cup breaking and Quincy's shouting. I turned off the earpiece and stepped into the building's elevator. Destination, the top floor. When I opened the boardroom door, all the directors turned suddenly. Quincy was standing in front of the seat of honor, his face livid, his tie crooked. He looked like a losing rooster in a fight. "Pardon the interruption," I said, smiling and heading to an empty seat. That seat was mine, acquired through the shares my father had bought through a shell company. "As a shareholder, I want to know what measures will be taken for the Elysian Fields project." Quincy's eyes looked like they were going to pop out of their sockets. "How? Kamari?" "Perhaps you don't know," Abernathy said, standing up to greet me. "According to preliminary investigations, it seems the incident was due to a problem with materials, and the supplier in question has close ties to the Fairchild Group." "Oh, what a coincidence," I said, feigning surprise. "My father just received word that tonight the feds will raid the Fairchild Group's contraband warehouse." The boardroom plunged into chaos. The directors were whispering, and some had already pulled out their phones to make calls. Quincy's face went gray. He knew better than anyone the dirty business between Sterling Construction and the Fairchild Group. "Gentlemen," I raised my voice, "I propose we establish an independent investigation committee to thoroughly examine all transactions between our company and the Fairchild Group. Furthermore, given Director Quincy Sterling's current unstable state, I request that his functions be temporarily suspended." "You witch!" Quincy lunged to grab me, but bodyguards blocked him. "Easy, honey," I said calmly. "It's for your own good. Imagine if your gambling debts in Atlantic City or the documents where you mortgaged company assets became public." Quincy choked on his breath like a strangled chicken. Only then must he have understood that the cards in my hand weren't just the proof of his infidelity. The board approved my proposal by an overwhelming majority. Leaving the building, the sky was as red as blood, like the fate of this city that would soon be turned upside down. My phone vibrated. A message from Caspian. "Short sale successful. 60% drop in Sterling stock. bought 11% of outstanding shares. Immediately after, a message from my father. Federal operation successful. George Fairchild has been detained for investigation. I took a deep breath and got into the car. Malik handed me a cup of hot tea. "Miss, are we going back to the villa?" "No, I haven't." I didn't finish the sentence when I noticed a black SUV in the rearview mirror. It had been following us since we left the company. "Malik, we're being followed." Malik's gaze hardened. He pressed a button on his earpiece. "Team 2, target in sight. Black Range Rover. Plate Romeo Golf Hotel 14. Check it." Not even a minute passed when the answer came. "The plate is fake, but the face captured inside is the head of security for Sterling Construction, Quincy's men." I narrowed my eyes. When the fox is cornered, lose them and let's go to the safe house. Malik turned sharply, and the car slipped into a narrow alley. The SUV followed. The two cars engaged in a silent chase through midtown Manhattan traffic at sunset. "Miss, hold on." Malik pressed a red button on the center console. From the back of the car, a large amount of smoke billowed out. Taking advantage of the pursuer's obscured vision, Malik made several sharp turns and pulled the car into the underground parking of a shopping center. We switched to another prepared vehicle and left silently. Through the back window, I saw the SUV still circling the entrance of the parking garage. "Quincy has started to suspect you." Malik's voice was tense. "Do you want me to tell the deacon to send someone to handle him?" "No, let him," I smiled with disdain. "I need to make it clear to him that I'm not easy prey." The safe house was a secret apartment prepared by my father in a luxury high-rise. As soon as I entered, I opened my laptop to check the latest events. The business news was full of the Sterling construction scandal. On social media, the hashtag Sterling collapse was trending. The most interesting part was the news of George Fairchild's arrest, which was spreading like wildfire. It was even said that he not only trafficked luxury goods, but also drugs and weapons. The Fairchild Group's website had been shut down and its shares suspended from trading. Suddenly the phone rang. It was Quincy. I let it ring more than 10 times before answering. "Kamari, it was you, wasn't it?" His voice was a raspy whisper. From the background noise, he seemed to be in a bar. "I don't know what you're talking about, honey." I put him on speaker and kept reviewing the documents. "Don't pretend. The board, the shares, the Fairchilds. It was all your work. What the hell do you want?" he screamed hysterically. "For you to feel what it's like to lose everything." My voice was as light as a feather. "Just like you made me feel." There was a moment of silence on the other end. Then the sound of a glass breaking and Quincy's shouting, "You'll see, you witch! I'll make you experience a pain worse than death." The call cut off abruptly. I shook my head and called Caspian. "Keep buying Sterling stock and spread the rumor that George Fairchild will sell all his shares to pay the fine for contraband." "I'm already doing it," Caspian laughed. "And we've discovered Victor Sterling has a secret account in Switzerland. In the last 5 years, a fixed amount has been deposited every month. The beneficiary is Siani Fairchild." This unexpected information made me lift an eyebrow. My father-in-law was sending money to Siani every month? Why? "Investigate the reason for the transfers and let's prepare the next plan. We have to send a very big gift to Victor Sterling's 70th birthday party." After hanging up, I walked to the window. The night was as black as ink, but in the distance the lights of the Sterling construction building were still glowing. But at dawn, the owner of that building might change. Quincy. "Did you think breaking my leg was the end? No. What I'm going to break is the spine of your entire family." The night before Victor Sterling's 70th birthday, I was in the dressing room trying on a dress in front of the mirror, a champagne-colored gown that beautifully enhanced my waist. The scar on my right leg was almost invisible. Malik knocked and entered. He was holding a velvet jewelry box. "From the deacon. He said it would go well with your dress tomorrow." Inside was a diamond necklace. In the center, a rare red diamond emitted a bloody light. I recognized that jewel. It was my mother's favorite when she was alive. "Where's Pop?" I touched the red diamond. It was as cold as ice. "He's waiting for you in the study. Mr. Vance is also there." I put on a robe and walked barefoot to the study. When I opened the door, Pop and Caspian were discussing in front of an architectural blueprint. Caspian wore an impeccable suit, and his eyes behind his gold-rimmed glasses were as sharp as a hawk's. When I entered, he nodded slightly. "Miss Lathan." "Kamari, come see this," Pop called me. The real blueprint for the Elysian Fields complex by Sterling Construction didn't show the luxury residential complex advertised, but a dense cluster of small apartments. The construction density exceeded regulations, and the green zone was cut in half. Victor Sterling cheated the city council. Caspian pointed to a stamp in a corner of the blueprint. "This is the final version, and work has already begun. If this becomes public, the whole project will receive a demolition order. Sterling Construction will suffer losses of at least $100 million. I continued the conversation. My father handed me a USB drive. "The birthday gift for tomorrow is ready, and there's something even more fun." I connected the USB to the computer. On the screen appeared a bank statement from my father-in-law's Swiss account. More than $50,000 transferred to Siani Fairchild every month, regularly for the last 3 years. The reason was always maintenance, but the last transaction indicated medical expenses. The date was exactly the day of Siani's miscarriage. My father-in-law knew about Siani's pregnancy. I frowned. Caspian opened another file. Not only that, from Siani's medical history, it turns out that during the conception period, Quincy was on a business trip in West Africa. The dates don't match. My eyes went wide. Then that child... "The most interesting thing," Caspian said, adjusting his glasses, "is that Victor Sterling, despite knowing all this, helped Siani hide the truth." My father smiled with disdain. The relationship between Victor and Siani might not be as simple as father-in-law and daughter-in-law. This information made me nauseous. The Sterling family was even filthier than I thought. Tomorrow at the birthday party, all the media will be there. I closed the laptop. It's time to give a very big gift to the Sterling family. The next day at noon, the Sterling mansion was decorated for a party, and luxury cars arrived one after another. I entered the ballroom on Quincy's arm, playing the part of a loving couple. Since his suspension, Quincy had become as docile as a stray dog. He didn't even dare look me in the eye. "Daughter, you've arrived!" My father-in-law greeted me with a radiant face. His gaze rested for a moment on the red diamond necklace on my neck, and his face tightened slightly. "This necklace was my mother's," I smiled sweetly. "I see you remember it, father-in-law." My father-in-law tried to maintain his calm and escorted us to the head table. High-ranking government officials and bank directors were there. I noticed Siani was also present. She wore a simple white dress and was sitting in a corner. Her belly was flat and her face was pale. When she felt my gaze, she lowered her head and started to fidget with her napkin. The party began, and the host announced the time for speeches. My father-in-law took the stage with a radiant face to brag about Sterling Construction's achievements. He didn't say a word about the recent scandals. There was applause, as if the stock crash and the disaster at the construction site a few days ago hadn't happened. Finally, I want to thank my daughter-in-law, Kamari, for her understanding and generosity. My father-in-law raised his glass. There was more applause. I stood up elegantly and headed to the stage. Quincy desperately tried to grab my dress under the table, but I avoided him with ease. "Father-in-law, you are charming." I took the microphone. "As I wasn't born into this family, I've prepared a special birthday gift." I signaled Caspian. While he manipulated the laptop, the screen in the ballroom slowly descended. My father-in-law's face tightened as if he had a bad feeling. "First, let's take a look at the real blueprint of the Elysian Fields complex by Sterling Construction." I pressed the button on the remote, and a murmur spread through the room. The real blueprint was completely different from the one advertised. Some government officials went pale suddenly. "President Sterling, what does this mean?" shouted the director of the Urban Planning Department, standing up. "A misunderstanding! It's all a misunderstanding!" My father-in-law rushed onto the stage to grab the microphone, but I dodged him quickly and moved to the next screen. And now, the bank statement from President Victor Sterling's Swiss account. In the last 3 years, he has transferred more than $50,000 every month to Miss Siani Fairchild. Facing the clear bank records projected on the screen, a deathly silence took over the ballroom. Siani screamed and ran for the exit, but she was blocked by security. Finally, my voice suddenly became sharp. "The pregnancy certificate of Miss Siani Fairchild, calculating the conception period, my husband was on a business trip in Africa." "Nonsense!" Quincy stood up. "I also have the DNA test result." I calmly projected the last slide. "Honey, that child wasn't yours." The room exploded, as if it had been hit by a bomb. Quincy lunged toward the stage like a madman, but Malik blocked him. My father-in-law, his face gray, dropped the glass he was holding. "And there's something even more fun." I raised my voice and played a recording. In the recording, my father-in-law was saying to Siani, "Have the child. We'll make sure Quincy accepts it as his. The Fairchild family really needs this child to inherit Sterling Construction." Upon hearing those words, Quincy turned around and punched his father in the face. "You old fox!" The situation spun completely out of control. The directors abandoned the ballroom. The bank directors tore up the loan contracts they had prepared. The journalists didn't stop taking photos. I stepped elegantly off the stage and, amid looks of shock and admiration, left the ballroom. Behind me, I heard Quincy's screams and my father-in-law's sobs. Siani had collapsed on the floor, but no one paid her any mind. I got into the car waiting for me and took a deep breath. "Miss, where should I take you?" Malik asked. "Let's go to the clinic." I looked at the phone. Siani's subsequent medical history had arrived. I wanted to see her in person. Halfway there, Malik turned sharply. "Miss, we're being followed again." With a sharp screech of tires, our car hit the guardrail. I was thrown from the seat and hit my forehead against the back of the front seat. I saw stars. Through the back window, I saw a black SUV without plates approaching us fast. "Get down!" Malik pushed my head down. The SUV rammed us again, this time on the side door. At that moment, 2 motorcycles appeared, and their riders shot at the SUV's tires. The SUV lost control, flipped several times, and crashed into the guardrail. "Deacon's men." Malik reversed and pulled away quickly from the scene. "Are you okay?" I touched the bump on my forehead and smiled coldly. "Quincy is really desperate." Returning to the safe house, I immediately called my father. "Pop, Quincy sent his men." "No, I'm fine. I survived." After hanging up, I looked at the security cameras. As expected, in the Sterling mansion, Quincy and Siani were arguing furiously. "It's all your fault! Now that witch has won, we're finished!" Quincy was screaming. Siani smiled with disdain. "That's not what your father was saying when we were together in bed. You Sterlings are all the same." "Shut up!" Quincy put his hands on her neck. "I'm going to kill you!" Siani fought back, and with a fruit knife she grabbed from the table, cut Quincy's face. He screamed and let her go. Siani took the chance to flee the room. I turned off the cameras and sat in thought. The dogfight was more interesting than expected. At that moment, Caspian called. "Miss Lathan, the result of the emergency board meeting just came in. Quincy has been officially fired, and Victor Sterling has been hospitalized for a heart attack. And the shares have hit another record low." Caspian laughed lightly. "We now own 18% of the shares. With the support of some small shareholders, it's enough to launch a hostile takeover bid." "Still not enough." I walked to the window. The night was dark as ink. I want to see Sterling Construction crumble completely. After hanging up, I opened the safe and pulled out a document that had been hidden for a long time. It was a copy of my mother's diary. In it was written the entire process of how my mother discovered the evidence of the Sterling and Fairchild family's crimes. The date on the last page was the day before her death. "Mama, We're almost there. None of them will escape." The next morning, Malik knocked quickly on the door. "Miss, there's a problem. Quincy and Siani have disappeared. They searched the villa." I jumped up. Around 3 in the morning, they had drugged the guard and erased the camera recordings. Malik handed me a tablet, but a camera in an alley caught them getting into a silver van. In the blurry recording, Quincy and Siani were being dragged into a van by men in black. It didn't look like they went voluntarily. "Those aren't our men," I frowned. "Check the fake plate." Malik shook his head, but the van was heading to the port. I immediately called my father, but an unknown male voice answered. "Miss Lathan, if you want to see your father and your husband again, come alone to warehouse number 3 at the port. If not—" Through the phone, I heard Quincy's terrified screams. In the abandoned warehouse on the pier, the sea breeze brought the smell of salt. I was standing in the darkness, toying with the small gun hidden in my sleeve. The cold metal calmed me slightly. Malik and 6 bodyguards were scattered around, ready to act. "Miss, scouting is done," I heard Malik's voice in the earpiece. "There are 2 men at the front door and 2 at the back. 4 total. Unknown faces, they don't look like local hoods. Where's Pop?" "Confirmed with the thermal camera. There are 4 people inside, 2 standing, 2 sitting. One of the seated ones has a build similar to the deacon's." I took a deep breath and pressed the earpiece. "Execute the plan." After 5 minutes, from the back door of the warehouse, I heard muffled thuds and the sound of something falling. I took the chance to approach the door and deliberately stepped on a piece of glass. "Who's there?" I heard a suspicious voice from inside. "I'm Kamari Lathan. They told me to come alone." I raised my voice. With a screech, the iron door opened and a gun was pointed at my forehead. The man holding the weapon was a giant with a fearsome look. A scar under his left eye was particularly disturbing. "Search her," he ordered. I raised my hands docilely and let another man search me. They took my phone and wallet, but they didn't find the knife hidden in my underwear or the gun in my sleeve. "Go in." The man with the scar pushed me. The warehouse was dark and damp. A bulb hung in the center, the only source of light. Underneath, a man in a black trench coat sat with his back turned. On his sides were armed thugs. On the floor, Quincy and Siani were curled up, hands tied behind their backs and gags in their mouths. Their faces were covered in blood. No sign of my father. "Miss Lathan, I've heard so much about you." The man in the trench coat turned slowly. A face I had never seen. About 40 years old, hawkish nose, and a long scar running across his cheek to his neck. "Where is my father?" I asked bluntly. The man smiled, showing his yellow teeth. "The deacon? He's fine. I called you today to make a proposal." "What proposal?" "The territories left by the Sterling and Fairchild families," he said, skillfully spinning a butterfly knife between his fingers. "Miss Lathan has brought them down in a very elegant way lately. My boss liked it." "And who is your boss?" "It doesn't matter," he said, standing up and approaching Quincy, stroking his cheek with the tip of the knife. "What matters is that we can collaborate. You get your revenge, and we keep their businesses. What do you think?" Quincy, terrified, opened his eyes wide and made muffled sounds, shaking his head. Siani had already fainted. I smiled with disdain. "You've kidnapped my husband just to make a cooperation proposal?" "Otherwise, we wouldn't have the honor of receiving someone like you, Miss Lathan." The man shrugged. "Besides, consider yourself lucky we did the favor of handling this snake who tried to run you over." I walked slowly toward the center. The sound of my heels on the concrete was sharp and clear. "Let me guess. You're from the rival syndicate, the Iron Circle." "Correct. I've heard you've lost a lot of business in the city lately because of my father." The man's face tightened, and the knife's movement stopped. "Miss Lathan investigates well." "Not only that," I said, stopping 3 feet from him, "I also know about the shipments arriving at this port tonight. By now, an anonymous tip has already reached the DEA." The furious man lunged at me with the knife. But at that moment, the warehouse roof exploded suddenly, and 12 smoke grenades fell. Acrid smoke filled the warehouse in an instant. Shots, screams, footsteps, everything mixed into a pandemonium. "Miss, get down!" I heard Malik's voice in the earpiece. I threw myself to the floor and pulled the gun from my sleeve. In the smoke, the man with the scar passed by me. I shot him in the knee. He fell screaming. After 5 minutes, when the smoke cleared, a dozen bodyguards armed to the teeth controlled the situation. The man in the trench coat and his thugs were on the floor, and Quincy and Siani were slumped in a corner like dead dogs. "The deacon is on his way." Malik brushed off my dress. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine." I walked over to Quincy and roughly pulled off his gag. "Honey, your friends don't seem very reliable." Quincy, between tears and snot, begged, "Kamari, save me. Those animals want to kill me." Too bad they didn't succeed. I stood up and told Malik, "Take them to the police station. Charges, kidnapping and attempted murder." "Attempted murder?" Malik asked, perplexed. I pointed to a camera in a corner of the warehouse. "I just recorded their confession. They also admitted to planning the car accident yesterday." Upon hearing those words, Quincy screamed suddenly, "Kamari, you're a demon! All of this was your work!" Malik gave him a kick. I shook my head and called my father. "Pop, everything's fine. The circle tried to get in. Yes, I've already alerted the authorities. I'm waiting for you." After hanging up, I left the warehouse. The morning sun, barely rising over the horizon, gilded the port. In the distance, police sirens approached, and from the other direction, my father's cars arrived. 4 days later, an earthquake rocked the New York financial world. The Vance Group officially announced the acquisition of Sterling Construction. As the heir to the group, I gave a press conference where I revealed the long-standing corruption of Sterling Construction. On the same day, police raided the Fairchild Group headquarters and arrested George Fairchild on multiple charges, including contraband and bribery. My image, while answering journalists' questions in front of the Sterling Construction building, was on the cover of every news outlet. A Chanel suit, my mother's red diamond necklace, and a gesture of confidence. A completely different image from the protagonist of a tragedy who months earlier had been locked in a basement with a broken leg. "Ms. Lathan, as the new president, will you maintain the current management?" a journalist asked. I smiled. "Of course not. Sterling Construction needs a complete overhaul from management to corporate culture." "It's said your husband, Quincy Sterling, is accused of embezzlement and incitement to murder. What do you have to say about that?" "The law will dictate a fair trial," I said with a solemn expression. "Personally, I feel deep regret and sadness for Mr. Sterling's actions." After the press conference, Caspian was waiting for me in the boardroom. "Miss Lathan, here are the final acquisition documents. Just needs your signature." I looked at the documents and suddenly felt curious. "Mr. Vance, why are you helping me? Is it just for my father?" Caspian adjusted his glasses. "At first, yes, because of a debt of gratitude I owe the deacon." He lifted his head, his eyes burning. "But now, because I admire who you are, Kamari Lathan." My heart skipped a beat. I immediately looked away. "Don't make those kinds of jokes." "It's not a joke." Caspian pulled a small box from his jacket. "This is a brooch your mother entrusted to my father. Now it returns to its true owner." I opened the box. Inside was a finely crafted pearl brooch. It was clearly a set with my mother's black pearl necklace. "My father told me that 20 years ago, after that fire, your mother saved him. This brooch is the only memento your mother left." "Fire? What fire?" "The deacon didn't tell you? 20 years ago, the Fairchild chemical plant exploded. 3 neighboring blocks were devastated." Suddenly, the glass I was holding felt heavy. My mother's death occurred right after that incident. "I need to see my mother's diary." I dropped the glass and grabbed my coat to leave. "Wait." Caspian stopped me. "I've discovered the true reason Victor Sterling was sending money to Siani. It wasn't for her, but for George Fairchild. Victor was paying for his silence regarding his involvement in your mother's murder." 20 years. The USB drive I was holding was cold. Again, 20 years. the darkest period of my life. Tomorrow I'll speak with my father and ask him everything. In the attic of my father's estate, in a dusty box, I found my mother's brown leather diary. May 3rd, 1998. I've obtained decisive proof. The scene where Claude Fairchild kills a protester at the site. Tomorrow I'll report it. May 4th. Victor Sterling came. He wanted to buy the film reel for a high sum. I refused. When he left, his look was terrifying. He's following me. I've hidden a copy of the reel in the diary. The writing stopped there. The last page was torn out. I searched the box and found a piece of an old photo. My mother, Victor Sterling, and Claude Fairchild posing in front of a sign that said, Fairchild Chemicals. On the back of the photo was a small inscription. Shareholders Meeting, Fairchild Chemicals, February 1997. My mother's maiden name was Solar, my father's Vance. It was possible my mother was also a shareholder back then. At that moment, Malik called. Miss, the deacon is in the hospital. Heart attack. In the hospital hallway, the red light of the OR didn't go out. 3 hours had passed since my father went in. What happened? We don't know. After the meeting with the circle reps, he suddenly felt pain in his chest, said an old member. Miss, the deacon has hidden something from you. The fire 20 years ago was an attempt on his life. Claude Fairchild wanted to eliminate a competitor and collect the insurance. At that moment, the OR door opened and the doctor came out. He's through the critical phase, but he only has 6 months. I entered the room. My father was surrounded by machines. Kamari, did you see the diary? Yes. Where is the real Mama hid? In the study at the estate under the 3rd floor tile. He coughed. Kamari, I entrust the syndicate to you. No, don't think about those things. No, listen. My father grabbed my hand tightly. Fairchild is gone, but the circle won't stop. Either you face them in a total war, or you dissolve the organization. The syndicate is too dirty. It's no place for a woman like you, Kamari. Don't be like me. I pulled up the 3rd floor tile in the study. Underneath was an oxidized metal box. Inside, several film reels and a letter. My mother's letter. To my dear Kamari, if you are reading this letter, it means I am no longer in this world. Don't be too sad. It was my choice. Revenge doesn't bring peace. Only justice can do that. Yours forever, Mama. I fell to the floor, crying. At that moment, a message from Caspian arrived. I've discovered it. Your mother didn't die from a fall. She was strangled and then thrown from the roof. The next morning, I gathered the old members of the organization in my office. You all know my father's situation. I want to hear your opinion on the future of the syndicate. One of the elders, Donato, spoke up. According to the rules, the young mistress should take command. But right now, with the threat from the circle, it's a crisis. A strong leader is needed. Are you saying I'm not fit? Don't misunderstand, but the organization isn't like a business. I understand. I pressed a button on the desk. Malik and armed bodyguards entered. You have 3 options. First, help me transform the syndicate into a legal security firm. Second, take a severance package and leave. Third, I pulled a folder from the drawer. Turn yourselves into the police. All your business is documented here. In the end, most of the elders chose retirement. Donato, furious, left saying he would join the circle. Malik watched Donato and set up a meeting with the head of the circle. That afternoon, I went with Caspian to the Elysian Field site. It had become a beautiful park full of children's laughter. This is what your mother would have liked to see, Caspian said. At that moment, I understood. My mother left my father not because she didn't love him, but because she wanted the next generation not to live in violence and hate. Kamari! Suddenly, Caspian knelt and pulled a ring from his pocket. I know it's too soon to say this, but I want to start courting you officially. Give me time. I placed a hand over his mouth. My eyes filled with tears. When I've settled things with my father and the syndicate, I'll wait as long as necessary. He stood up and hugged me lightly. A few days later, my father had heart surgery. In the hallway, in front of the OR, I toyed with my mother's black pearl necklace. Fortunately, the surgery was a success. That afternoon, I met with the head of the circle at the Waldorf Astoria. The syndicate will dissolve and become a legal security firm. We will cede part of the territories left by the Fairchild family with one condition: abandon all illegal business. After intense negotiation, he accepted the proposal. Returning to the hospital, my father was awake. I showed him my mother's letter and the evidence. He cried, "It's as if I killed her." "No, Pop, it's all over." My father pulled a document from under the pillow. "Sign it. The syndicate is yours now." It was a will, leaving me all his assets. The last page contained a clause. If Kamari Lathan marries Caspian Vance, 10% of the shares will transfer to Caspian Vance. My father laughed for the first time in a long time. "That boy is excellent, much better than the son-in-law your mother chose for me." A month later, Vance Security was officially launched. At a press conference, I announced that 10% of the profits from the Elysian Fields project would be donated to charity. "Ms. Lathan, it said your father was the founder of the syndicate." "It's true, yes. My father once lost his way, but he spent the rest of his life trying to correct that mistake. Vance Security will offer an opportunity to all those who, like him, wish for a new start." After the press conference, Caspian took me to the Central Park of Elysian Fields. "Kamari, I've been thinking about something for a long time." He knelt and pulled out an old diamond ring. "This ring was my grandmother's. She told me to give it to the person who could put an end to the painful history of our family." I thought of my mother's letter. Justice, not revenge. "Okay, but with one condition. Turn the top floor of the Sterling Construction Building into a children's library named after my mother." Caspian put the ring on my finger and kissed the back of my hand. "Of course." On the wedding day, my father walked me down the aisle. Caspian was waiting for me at the end of the hallway with eyes full of love. I tied my mother's black pearl necklace to my bouquet. On our honeymoon, I whispered to Caspian, "I think I'm pregnant. If it's a girl, I want to name her after my mother, Eleonora." Caspian hugged me tightly. "Thank you, Kamari, for breaking this terrible chain of hate." In the distance, a new day was dawning. My mother's pearls shimmered under the starlight, like a period marking the end of everything and the beginning of all that was to come. Did you like the story, and which city are you listening from? Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story. With love and respect.